I'm Victoria Marshall with the latest news from the Washington Watch News Desk. Today is day 2 of Family Research Council's Pray Vote Stand Summit, where Christians are gathering with like-minded believers this weekend to pray for our nation and take a stand for biblical values. I got to talk to several attendees at the summit and hear their thoughts about the programming thus far and what matters most this election cycle.
Now is the time for action. I mean, we are here for a time such as this. We're getting to the end of the game here, and we really need to stand up and get out there and pray and vote and stand.
Here we are at a pivotal place in our country, and I wanted to get connected with those who are doing something about it.
But I came last night and today because I want to be with like-minded people, and especially believers.
Being in a community of people who believe in the power of prayer is huge, because really, from my experience being on the Kern County Board of Education, prayer is vital for just taking a stand for God's kingdom. We can't do that without prayer.
Now, turning our attention to national news, Hurricane Helene's death toll surpassed 200 on Thursday as search and rescue crews continue to uncover bodies from the deadly storm that made landfall in Florida 1 week ago. The 215 deaths confirmed so far make Helene the third deadliest hurricane of the 21st century. Yesterday, President Joe Biden visited victims of the hurricane in Georgia. He called upon Congress to pass more funding for FEMA after Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said the agency is running out of money.
This entire project is going to cost billions of dollars, not tens of thousands, not million, not a billion, billions of dollars, because it comes through, it goes through so many states. You know, and Congress has an obligation to me, it seems to me, to ensure that states have the resources they need.
Mr. President, Speaker Johnson has said a supplemental can wait until after the election. What kind of timeline do you have in mind, sir?
Hey, we can't wait.
Listen, we got to move the press.
Can't wait. People need help now.
Biden's comments come after it was reported that FEMA has spent hundreds of millions of dollars on illegal immigrant resettlement programs. Now, Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio also took some time out of his campaigning schedule to visit victims of Helene in Virginia yesterday. Here's what he said to reporters.
One thing I've heard consistently from the governor is that FEMA has provided a lot of resources, and of course we're very grateful to that. But I also think that talking to people just on the ground today, but also talking to the governor, this is a community that has long been left behind by the leadership of this country. People who have been forgotten, people who have been ignored, people who have been judged despite the fact that they are the nicest people in the world.
And in other domestic news, the Longshoremen's Union reached a tentative deal with the U.S. Maritime Alliance Thursday night, ending the 3-day strike that could have hit supply chains and driven up prices. The union and the U.S. Maritime Alliance agreed to extend the master contract until January 15th to return to the bargaining table to negotiate all other outstanding issues, according to a statement released on Facebook. The tentative agreement on a wage increase was not immediately disclosed, but it's been widely reported to have been set around 62% over 6 years to roughly $63 per hour. President Biden applauded the agreement in a statement on Thursday, thanking the two sides for coming together to reopen the East Coast and Gulf ports. And in a shocking reversal, the Biden administration will be ending the legal status of tens of thousands of Venezuelan migrants who were allowed to fly into the U.S. through a sponsorship program. They were granted permissions to live and work in the U.S. legally for 2 years under an immigration law known as parole. Roughly 117,000 Venezuelans have come to the U.S. so far under the policy. The first group of Venezuelans who arrived through the program 2 years ago are set to lose their parole status later this month. Now, the decision by the Biden administration comes as immigration is a top issue this election cycle. There have been multiple reports of Venezuelan gangs taking over apartment buildings and hotels in various states, as well as committing crimes. This may be an attempt by the admin at appealing to voters by cracking down on such crime. And those are today's headlines. I'm Victoria Marshall. Up next is Washington Watch with Tony Perkins. We'll see you next week with more news.
From the heart of our nation's capital in Washington, D.C., bringing compelling interviews, insightful analysis, taking you beyond the headlines and sound bites into conversations with our nation's leaders and newsmakers, all from a biblical worldview. Washington Watch with Tony Perkins starts now.
Mr. President, how confident are you that a all-out war can be averted in the Middle East?
How confident it's not going to rain? I don't believe there's going to be an all-out war. I think we can avoid it. So there's a lot to do yet.
That was President Joe Biden in a rare appearance at before the press this afternoon. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Friday edition of Washington Watch, and I'm Tony Perkins. We're broadcasting live from the Real Life Network booth at the Pray Vote Stand Summit here in Washington, D.C. While the world is waiting to see how Israel will respond to Iran's ballistic missile attack, Iran's supreme leader said Tuesday's attack was, quote, the minimal punishment that the country has extracted on the Jewish state, suggesting they may do more. Daniel Cohen, news director for Real Life Network, joins me in just a moment. And the criticism of the Biden administration's response to Hurricane Helene is growing, and even more so as President Biden and his team claim it is a money issue.
If congressional Republicans were serious, if they were really truly serious about doing something for the communities that was impacted by Hurricane Helene, they would join us in calling for additional funding.
That was White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. We'll talk more about that later. Also, Dr. John Sorosin, President and CEO of Evangelism Explosion, one of the sponsors of the Pray Vote Stand Summit, joins me to talk about a joint evangelism project between Evangelism Explosion and Family Research Council. Well, breaking her political silence, Melania Trump released a promotional video and excerpts of her soon-to-be-released book that has been yet another disappointment to pro-life Republicans. In the book, she writes, quote, it is imperative to guarantee that women have autonomy in deciding their preference of having children based on their own convictions, free from any intervention or pressure from the government, end quote. Katie Faust, founder of Them Before Us, joins me for that conversation. The website, TonyPerkins.com, lots of resources there for you, but let me encourage you, if you would like to join in with the Pray Vote Stand Summit, you can do that. You can watch online, download the Real Life Network app. You can be a part of tonight's events here at the Omni Showroom in Washington, D.C. Well, earlier today, in a rare sermon in Tehran, Iran's supreme leader warned of further attacks against Israel while expressing solidarity with the regime's proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah. Israeli forces continue to strike in Lebanon, including targeted attacks to eliminate the presumed new leader of Hezbollah. Join me now to discuss the latest from Israel, Daniel Cohen. He is news director for Real Life Network. Daniel.
Good to be with you, Tony. How you doing?
Welcome back.
This is exciting. I know that behind the cameras that people can't see, but there's an energy in the room, and there's so many people here that love Israel, and it's warming my heart just being a part of it.
Well, we had a panel discussion last night on Israel. Of course, we've been waiting to see developments, and developments are happening by the hour. As I mentioned, the supreme leader there in Tehran suggesting that there may be more to come.
He said that Israel won't last long. And I hate to be I'm happy to be the one to tell him I've read this book, and I know the last chapter, and I know the last book in the Bible, and I know how the story ends for Israel, so he's wrong, right? But what moves Israel has made in the last 2 weeks, in the last 24 to 48 hours, it sounds like there's a job opening for the commander of Hezbollah.
I'm not sure too many people want to stand in line for that, though.
They took out Hassan Nasrallah, and then the next person in command, Israel, has already taken out that person as well. And so Israel is making strong moves. How will they respond? What will they do? How will they respond to the Iranian attack? Danny Danon, the Israeli ambassador, said it will be painful. Will it be directly on the oil fields? President Biden, in that clip that you played up the top of the show, is discouraged, said, no, don't hit the oil fields. That's political, right? Because he doesn't want gas prices going up right before an election. Nothing to tamper with oil. I went to Saudi Arabia in 2022, right before the midterm elections, when President Biden went hat in hand to meet with the Saudi Crown Prince. And you remember, he met with the largest OPEC nation, oil producers, saying, could you the gas prices were through the roof. If you go back 2 years, gas prices were averaging around, what, $5-something a gallon. So again, I think it just shows that political considerations are affecting what President Biden says about Israel and about the friendship, and it shouldn't be political. I wish he would just say, Israel, we support you, what do you need from us, and get out of the way.
Today, Israeli Defense Minister Gallant said that Israel has more surprises in store. What does he mean by that?
That's a great question, and I think strategically, after Iran launched a direct attack on Israel, this wasn't a proxy, this wasn't Hamas, this wasn't the Houthis, and this wasn't Hezbollah. And so, to me, that says all options should be on the table for Israel. And whether Israel wants to take out the oil, whether it wants to take out ports in Tehran, which will cripple the economy. I just spoke with General Boykin in that chair about an hour ago, and he said, Israel doesn't have to take out Iranian oil. Just destroying the ports will cripple the economy. But really, all options are on the table, and the Israelis, as we've seen in the last few weeks, are very creative and can do pretty much whatever they want, because we've seen they've carried out an attack inside Tehran near the presidential palace.
Right. And the air defense system that Iran has is very limited. It's certainly not what Israel has. And when you look at the 190 ballistic missiles that Iran fired on Israel without effect, I mean, a historic, unprecedented attack with no effect, I would have to think that this is bolstering Israel's sense of confidence and even strengthening the country in their defense.
It seems like Iran is exposed, isn't it? There was one fatality on that massive strike on Tuesday of 181 missiles, and it happened to be an Arab man who was walking outside of Jericho. It looked like he was on a phone, if you've seen the video, and a piece of shrapnel falls right on him. But the fact, it's amazing and biblical, the fact that God protected Israel, that there was not one fatality, and it was frightening. It was frightening, but we'll have to see, Tony. We'll have to see. But the response that Israel can formulate in this moment, I don't know. I'm watching, because you and I are both saying, well, what's Israel going to do? Everyone's been asking, what is Israel going to do? But Iran's exposed because Israel's taken out Hamas. They've decimated Hamas. They've hurt Hezbollah. They've been attacking the Houthis in Yemen. And the 100 to 150,000 missiles that have been pointed directly at Tel Aviv, which is right outside where I live, has been sort of like, so to speak, a loaded gun pointed at Israel, which has kept Israel from really doing carrying out any sort of extensive attack on Iran. So now Iran is exposed, and what will Israel do?
There is no urgency for them to act, for Israel to respond. In the meantime, they're eliminating the threat from their north as they're continuing to press their case against Hezbollah in Lebanon. And as they take out those rockets and those rocket launchers, they're able to focus more on Iran and that threat that may come from there.
And if you think about it, Tony, what has Israel said? They have been warning for months. They've been warning Hezbollah to retreat. There's a river called the Litani River, and they've been telling Hezbollah to retreat. They've been firing rockets since October 8th. Here we are, we're within a week. We're just a couple of days away from the October 7th massacre. And there are 70 to 80,000 people who live in northern Israel who have been unable to go home. Hezbollah has been effectively controlling the northern part of Israel, firing all those rockets. There are people that the congregation that I attend in Tel Aviv that live right on the Lebanese border near Akko, near some of those northern cities, Nahariya, and they want to go home. And Israel's been saying, enough is enough. How long? I heard Prime Minister Netanyahu saying, if this was San Diego, if this was somewhere El Paso, Texas, the United States wouldn't tolerate a foreign entity controlling United States borders and controlling United States territory. Same goes for Israel.
Daniel, I want to switch gears a little bit here. You just arrived a day or so ago here into the United States from Israel. In fact, you were in flight when the attack was launched by Iran. We'll talk a little bit about the Pray Vote Stand Summit here. What's the sense as you interact with what we call SageCon, spiritually active, governance-engaged conservatives?
I love being surrounded by the people here who understand, who get it, who get Israel, and who are able to make the connection. I talk to a lot of pastors, and I've been speaking with some here, and it's just, the Lord has put it strong on my heart to share that churches that are growing, churches that are thriving in the United States right now, and I hope you hear this, are churches and pastors and pastoral teams who are making the connection between Israel right now. I've spoken to pastors who really, they don't teach on Israel, they don't really get the connection points, some have not ever been there. Some that haven't been to Israel in decades, and some that I've personally spoken to, and they say, hey, explain this to me. What about this relationship? Well, what about that? And so for me, my heart is just, it's exploding to hear there's so much love for Israel, but I tell people it's important, it's fundamental. How much of the Bible has got to talk about this it's his land, these are his people, right? It's the only covenant nation. The United States is not a covenant nation, Israel is. Right. It's important to know the connection points because what's going on in the news right now, it's all prophetic. It all ties together, so we have to know what's in the book, right?
When you look at, you say it's prophetic, when you look at that timeline, the biblical timeline, how significant is this moment?
Well, it's a historic moment just in terms of what Israel's been able to execute. I'm not an eschatologist, I'm not a pastor, but what we do is pastoral. We have to know what's in the Word, and 1948, Israel was reconstituted and regathered, and it's like a stopwatch started, a clicking clock started in that moment, because that is the generation that won't pass away before Jesus, before Yeshua returns. So we don't know the hour, we don't know the day, right? But we're supposed to be expecting, we're supposed to be waiting, and we're just supposed to be about our Father's business. And pray, vote, stand, and what you are doing here, Tony, and what you've been able to do, and mobilizing. The people here are passionate. And the majority of people that are on fire for the Lord, I think those 10 to even 20%, those are the people that are really accomplishing 70, 80% for the kingdom. And it's so great how it starts here and how it feathers out to the grassroots.
And actually, we know that from the studies that we've done on the SageCons that they are influencers. They influence others in their conversations intentionally in the material that they hand out.
It's so important what you're doing, Tony. God bless you for us. Yeah.
Daniel Cohen, I want to ask you this question. We've got about a minute and a half left. We talked about the significance of this moment, but you said something about the church standing for Israel, speaking out on this. I'm not quite sure I can put this into words, but if there were a time to stand for Israel, and I think there always is, this is probably the most significant time, most important time to take that stand, is it not?
I'm a Jewish believer in Yeshua. I have 2 Jewish parents. I have 4 Jewish grandparents. My grandmother is a Holocaust survivor. She was in 2 concentration camps. Right now, the historicity of this moment for the church to rise up in support of Israel, to pray for Israel, to love Jewish people in wherever at work or at school. Right now, you have an opportunity to show the Jewish people the radical love of Yeshua. Who is Jewish, by the way? I get that all the time in Israel. People say, well, you're not Jewish, you're a convert. And I say, well, I'm a Cohen on one side and I'm a Levi on the other. That doesn't get more Jewish than me. And by the way, I believe that Yeshua, Jesus, is who he said he is, and he's Jewish. And they go, oh yeah. So I believe that this Jewish person is the Jewish Messiah. I'm Jewish. There's no conflict for me, but it kind of blows people's minds because it's so obvious.
This is a moment of opportunity to witness love.
Exactly. And I say to love, it doesn't mean you have to say, well, Matthew says this. Just to love people, just to love the Jewish people, and just provoke them to just know, like, why is this person loving me so? What are they doing?
All right, Daniel Cohen, we're out of time. Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Always good to be with you.
Folks, you can tune in the Real Life Network app. Don't go away. More Washington Watch straight ahead.
Are you a Christian parent looking to raise a spiritual champion in today's culture? Renowned author George Barna has written a new book, Raising Spiritual Champions. This book offers valuable insights based on extensive research conducted by George Barna, the Family Research Council, and Arizona Christian University. Learn how to help your children discern biblical truth and find compelling meaning and purpose. Don't miss out on this essential resource for parents. Order your copy today.
Hello, I'm Jody Heiss, president of FRC Action. Here in America, we thank God for the right to vote, and we can all agree on the importance of this upcoming election. Many of us want to support candidates who share our values, but we're not comfortable supporting the big national political organizations. Well, we have a solution for supporting candidates through FRC Action's Faith, Family, and Freedom Fund. Being a super PAC, it allows for unlimited individual and corporate donations, so we can endorse and fund campaigns for people who share our values. By giving to this fund, we're able to pull all of our contributions together and support and endorse like-minded candidates. That's how we move the needle. So let's be the best stewards possible and get the most out of our political contributions by uniting our efforts. For more information or to contribute, visit faithfamilyfreedomfund.org. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
All of us are born with the desire to find truth and meaning. Where did I come from? What happens when I die? While our answers to these questions may divide us, we are united in our need for the freedom to answer life's biggest questions and make life's biggest decisions for ourselves. That's why religious freedom matters for everyone. Religious freedom matters because the powerful have long wanted to control those who are less powerful. Religious freedom matters because the freedom of those who are different is often threatened by those who believe different is dangerous. At the Center for Religious Liberty at Family Research Council, we promote religious freedom for everyone because the only alternative is religious freedom for no one. We encourage Americans and the American government to engage and advocate for the persecuted, and they do. We work every day to bring good news to the afflicted, to proclaim liberty to captives and freedom to prisoners. We do it because that's what Jesus does. We work to give freedom to others because we ourselves have been set free.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. I'm your host, Tony Perkins. Good to have you with us on this Friday afternoon. We're broadcasting live from the Pray Vote Stand Summit here in Washington, D.C. at the Omni Shoreham Hotel. And if you weren't able to be here, obviously you're not if you're listening or watching on TV, but you can be a part of it. Go to the App Store. If you want to download the Real Life Network app, you can watch all of tonight and tomorrow on the Real Life Network app. Well, throughout the South, the search for the missing continues as communities continue the recovery effort from this historic storm. Historic levels of rain, violent winds last week. The death toll has now reached more than 200 people, with over half the fatalities so far from North Carolina's mountainous regions. Join me now to discuss this, Congressman Mike Waltz. He serves on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He represents the 6th Congressional District of Florida, and he's the author of a new book coming out October the 22nd, Hard Truths, Think and Lead Like a Green Beret. He's the only Green Beret to ever been elected to Congress. Congressman Waltz, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Well, hey, Tony, always great to be with you, and God bless everybody that's with you right now.
Well, we've got a big crowd here listening and watching. I want to go to this issue of the response. Now, I understand you've been through this many times being in Florida. I've been through it in Louisiana. These storms are intense. They're big. The federal government's only one spoke in the wheel, but there's been a lot of criticism of the federal government response. Is that justified?
I do think it's justified, Tony. I mean, thank God for our fellow Americans, like the Cajun Navy and what I'm calling the Florida Man Air Force. People that are bringing their boats, their helicopters, their light planes, anything they can to come up there and help. But they can only do so much. That's kind of a ragtag effort. They're doing what they can to bring in supplies to our fellow Americans that are stranded. But my point is, right down the street, literally, is Fort Bragg that houses the 82nd Airborne, the 18th Airborne Corps, the Joint Special Operations Command. A little further down the street is the 2nd Marine Division at Camp Lejeune. They have mobile air traffic controllers. They have dozens of helos, mobile hospitals, all the supplies, food supplies, what have you, that you need. When they were deployed to help with Hurricane Katrina, they had the orders ready to go on day 2. And President Bush got down there on day 2, and he was criticized heavily then.
Right.
We've been now over a week And I'm talking to these guys and gals, they're ready to go. They still don't have the orders. And the 1,000 that Biden belatedly mobilized is a drop in the bucket. We're talking 10,000 square miles here in the mountains with impermissible roads, and whole communities have been washed away. It is too slow, too late, but that's par for the course with this administration.
And the difference here with this storm compared to some of the others we've seen is what you mentioned, the infrastructure, the roads being washed out, accessibility. Many of these areas, and I've been each day on the program, we've had someone, either a member from those areas affected, or we've had Samaritan's Purse on. Most of these areas can only be reached by air. And when you talk about the military, they have those assets. They could easily put them into place.
Yeah, that's right. And again, it's not like we're asking them to go halfway across the country.
Right.
Fort Bragg is just 100 miles away, and it's not an Air Force base with a bunch of fighter jets. I mean, this is what they do. They've also gone into Haiti in the wake of earthquakes. They've gone into Africa. They need to go and help their fellow American. They're willing to do it. They're waiting on the orders from the Pentagon. Those should have been pre-positioned, Tony. All the bureaucracy, you can have all of the orders, the funding, everything in place, and then if you don't need it, fine. We do that in Florida and Louisiana. The forecasters were clear that this was going to be a massive flooding event in Georgia and North Carolina. This was just a total lack of preparation. Some were saying, I'm not willing to say this yet, but a lack of concern, frankly, coming out of this White House.
Let me ask you this question, Congressman Mike Waltz, because what we've heard from the administration has been, well, we don't have the money. FEMA is going to run out of money. We need Congress to return to allocate more money. And I actually was talking to the House Speaker this morning, and it has been very clear that the CR that was approved last week before Congress left included additional money to deal with natural disasters for relief. But is this a case of misplaced priorities rather than a case of a lack of resources?
Yeah, well, I mean, to invoke the title of my book, The Hard Truth, here's the hard truth, is that Mayorkas, the DHS secretary, he has the authority, should he choose to use it, to move funds from account to account under emergency orders and statutes. I mean, Lord knows we have seen them do this when it comes to things they want to do. All the executive orders they both revoked from the Trump administration and put in place when they wanted to do something when it came to illegal immigrants, and both the housing, the feeding, the supplies, the transportation. They could do it if they wanted to, Tony. We're talking billions of dollars that have been spent to help non-citizens, and fellow Americans are suffering, literally dying right now in the mountains of North Carolina. It's unacceptable. It's wrong.
I want to put a fine point on that. We only have about a minute and a half left, Mike, but the FEMA allocated last year, this year in grants over $1 billion, close to over $1.5 billion in immigrant resettlement into this country. But they say they don't have money to help Americans who are facing the suffering in the wake of this disaster. Something's wrong with priorities.
No, it's absolutely, it's upside down priority. But I think it's a reflection of really this administration's focus. And it gets to, we can pull the thread to how they progressives view the world through black, white, and brown, when we should be only seeing red, white, and blue, right? We're just fellow Americans, period, or you're not. And you are afforded a different level and a higher level of prioritization from our own government that we paid for if you're a U.S. citizen, period, full stop. And Mayorkas could do it, and if he needs to come back to Congress to backfill his account, fine. But he could do it right now. I'm not buying it for 1 second.
Yeah, essentially the only thing that fixes this is an election. You got to get an administration that cares about America, maybe America first. Congressman Mike Waltz, thanks so much.
I'm worried about how these people are going to vote. speaking of the election and the need for North Carolina, but another time.
Yeah, but in Florida, you had mobile voting sites through some hurricanes. Maybe that's something that needs to be looked at as well. We're out of time. Mike, thanks for joining us. Folks, stick with us. We're back with more after this.
Everything we do begins as an idea. Before there can be acts of courage, there must be the belief that some things are worth sacrificing for. Before there can be marriage, there is the idea that man should not be alone. Before there was freedom, there was the idea that individuals are created equal. It's true that all ideas have consequences, but we're less aware that all consequences are the fruit of ideas. Before there was, where did I come from? Who decides what is right and wrong? What happens when I die? Our answers to these questions exist for us. What we think of as political debates are often much more than that. They're disagreements about the purpose of our lives and the source of truth. As Christians, our goal must be to think biblically about everything. Our goal is to help you see beyond red and blue, left and right, to see the battle of ideas at the root of it all. Our goal is to equip Christians with a biblical worldview and help them advance and defend the faith in their families, communities, and the public square. Cultural renewal doesn't begin with campaigns and elections. It begins with individuals turning from lies to truth. But that won't happen if people can't recognize a lie and don't believe truth exists. We want to help you see the spiritual war behind the political war, the truth claims behind the press release, and the forest from the trees.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. I'm your host, Tony Perkins. We're broadcasting live from the Pray Vote Stand Summit here in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. And if you're not able to be here, you can still join us. You can download the Real Life Network app, and you can be a part of tonight's activities. We've got a great lineup. We're going to have a number of very informative panels and speakers. We got all day tomorrow. And I encourage you to join us. That is the Real Life Network app. Well, as Christians, we recognize the Great Commission calling us to share our faith in Christ boldly, lovingly, and naturally. I mean, it needs to be a part of who we are and what we do. The book of Acts demonstrates how the disciples multiplied the body of Christ by not just winning people to the Lord one by one, but also by training those that were won to the Lord to win and train others. It's a multiplication effect. And at the Pray Vote Stand Summit this week, there's training sessions to help faithful Christians multiply the faith by sharing the faith. And joining me now to talk about this is Dr. John Sorensen. He is the president of Evangelism Explosion International and host of Share Life Today and a partner with the Pray Vote Stand Summit. Dr. Sorensen, welcome to Pray Vote Stand and Washington Watch.
Well, it is a delight to be here, Tony. Thank you.
Now, I just want to start. I know that you are based in North Carolina. We were just talking before the program. You got out, but you saw it firsthand.
Yeah, and I've never seen devastation like what we're experiencing.
And you were in Florida before that.
Absolutely. I've lived in Florida. I've lived in the Midwest. I've seen tornadoes. I've lived through major, massive hurricanes. And yet I've never seen, because it also had this saturation of the ground that happened a couple of days ahead, and then this massive flooding that occurred. And I've never seen that before. Absolutely devastating.
We went through that flooding in 2016 in Louisiana. Flooding is it's kind of a helpless feeling. You can't get away from it.
Yeah.
Let's talk evangelism.
Okay.
I think that's what you do.
Well, and you know, it goes together because I've heard so many stories about folks that have been trained in EE. Well, Sunday, people couldn't get out from their neighborhoods. So they invited neighbors over to just have church there in their garage or in their backyard. And, you know, no professional pastor there. So whoever could preached, and it ended up being all these people trained in EE.
Well, one aspect about that is in times of need, people are more open to, all right, what does this mean? What do I do? How do I respond? And so that's kind of a microcosm of the macro that we're experiencing right now in our world of great uncertainty. And you've actually, we were talking about this a few weeks ago. You were out in Kansas City, I believe, and you were out on the street just as teams going out.
We do this all the
People very
time.
open.
Yeah, people are very open. Shockingly, I think, to most pastors, they would think, we started experiencing something. Well, you remember 9/11, and right after that, all these people flooded into the church. But it only lasted for about 6 months, and then it was done. What we've watched now over the last 10 years in America is this rising interest in evangelism. I want to mention this tonight, that we did a study about 5 years ago because we were just shocked at what we were seeing. And in this study, we found that 66% of Americans are absolutely open to having a spiritual conversation with someone. But in the event you just mentioned in Kansas City 2 weeks ago, it was 90%. 9 out of 10 folks that we just went up to, strangers on the street, saying, hey, can we talk to you about spiritual things? We're like, sure. And I have to tell you, we've just never seen that kind of openness that we're seeing today. Now, sadly, there are some pastors who don't know about that because they're not doing it. Right. And I think the call is that we've got to get out and we've got to join God in what he is doing in America today.
So, Dr. Sorensen, let's talk about a kind of a joint project that is being launched here at the Pray Vote Stand Summit that is going to be accessible online for people to go through Evangelism Explosion.
Well, one of the things that we love about the Family Research Council and Pray Vote Stand is it's filled with people who actually want to do something. And so we were thinking if we could just join with them and we could give them some tools, some skills to be able to actively witness for Jesus, to do it in a winsome way in today's world, what success that would be. And so, yeah, we developed this joint project, Pray Vote Stand Evangelism Training, so folks anywhere, anytime can learn some real, genuine skills. How do you start a conversation and turn it into a spiritual conversation? How do you ask some key questions that will allow a person to discern, diagnose where a person is spiritually? What would you share if you had the opportunity? Well, we'll be very clear. And let's say they say yes at the end. How would you lead somebody? That's a pretty tall order for some folks if they've never experienced it before. So not only are we offering this, and it's done in an incredibly excellent way, you can take it. But beyond this, we're going to offer on-the-job training opportunities online to where you'll be able to join from anywhere and see it with your own eyes. And so if we can, let's say that we're able to get 1,000 people or 10,000 people who have determined they're going to start sharing their faith, or, honestly, Tony, that's how we're going to change America.
100% agree. As I've said many times, this election won't save the country. It can destroy it, it won't save it. What's going to save it is the gospel of Jesus Christ. Very quickly, 30 seconds, how can people find out more about this?
pvstraining.org, PrayVoteStandTraining.org. You can see the site, you can register, and you can begin to take it. It's absolutely free, and I'm telling you, if you'll do it, it's going to change your life as well as the folks that you share with.
Well, John, I appreciate you being a part of the Pray Vote Stand Summit. Appreciate you being here on Washington Watch and for the great work that Evangelism Explosion does, because it is sharing the hope of not just America, the hope of the world on the streets everywhere we go. All right, folks, thank you for being with us as well. Let me encourage you, if you'd like to join us tonight, download the Real Life Network app. Don't go away, because we've got more Washington Watch coming up on the other side of this break.
Join us October 3rd through the 6th as we gather with spiritually active, governance-engaged conservatives from across America at the Pray Vote Stand Summit in Washington, D.C. We'll pray for our nation, engage in government and culture, and stand for biblical truth alongside Christian leaders, worldview experts, and government officials. We'll discuss important issues like the sanctity of life, religious freedom, protecting students, strengthening families, praying for our nation, and how you can impact America's future from a biblical worldview. Our nation stands at a critical juncture, and we must ensure that the issues impacting faith, family, and freedom are understood and advanced. Register now at PrayVoteStand.org. That's PrayVoteStand.org.
Jesus said in John 15, "These things I've spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full." In 2024, in these divided and uncertain times, how can this be possible? By abiding in Him through His Word. At Family Research Council, we want to help you do that, which is the reason for the Stand on the Word Bible reading plan. In just 10 to 15 minutes each day, you will have read the entire Bible in just 2 years. But more importantly, you will be abiding in Him daily. Find our Bible reading plan at frc.org/Bible. And join Tony Perkins each weekday for a 10-minute devotional inspired by the daily reading and designed to encourage you on this journey through the Bible. Listen on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube. And remember, the grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of our God will stand forever.
Research has found that there are 59 million American adults who are a lot like you. There are millions of people around the country who are born again, deeply committed to practicing their faith, and believe the Bible is the reliable Word of God. But that's not all. They're also engaged in our government. They're voters. They're more likely to be involved in their community, and they're making a difference in elections. The problem is that a lot of them feel alone too. We want to change that. FRC wants to connect these 59 million Americans to speak the truth together, no matter the cost. If you want to learn more about this group and what it means to be a spiritually active, governance-engaged conservative, or if you want to find out if you are one of these sage cons yourself, join us. Go to frc.org/SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more. That's SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. I'm Tony Perkins, your host, and we are broadcasting from the Pray Vote Stand Summit here in our nation's capital. And if you're not able to be with us in person, you can join us online. Download the Real Life Network app, and you'll be able to catch all of tonight and tomorrow's events. That's the Real Life Network app. Our word for today comes from Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all man, and the living will take it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by a sad countenance the heart is made better. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. Solomon is saying it's more instructive to go to a funeral than a birthday party, because a funeral reminds us of the brevity of life. Little more than a vapor, as the psalmist wrote. This reminder will stir the wise person to live with purpose. Living with a sense of seriousness and contemplation about life is healthy and necessary. As Moses wrote in Psalm 90, he said, "Teach us to number our days so that we may gain a heart of wisdom." Realize our time is short and use your time wisely. To join us on our journey through the Bible, text Bible to 67742. Well, as the first presidential election of the post-Roe era approaches, the Harris-Walz campaign and Democrats down ballot have gone all in on abortion as their major campaign theme. This makes sense as an effort to divert attention from the Biden-Harris administration's mishandling of the economy, the border, and international affairs. But it also reflects on their priorities. They believe this. They're for it. Meanwhile, many Republicans are campaigning behind a muted and timid defense of life, with some even borrowing lines from across the aisle. We need to go on the offense to create a culture of life. We don't need to apologize. There's no white flags that we need to wave. Joining me now to discuss this is Katie Faust, one of the speakers here at the Pray Vote Stand Summit. She is the founder of Them Before Us and the author of Them Before Us, Why We Need a Global Children's Rights Movement. Katie, welcome back to Washington Watch.
I love being with you. This is such a great conference. I really appreciate your principled, steadfast stance
on behalf of all of the timeless issues, right, that are going to be the same, true, regardless of what the election says. But I especially appreciate that you guys are unflinching on matters that affect kids.
Well, thank you. And that's why you're here, because you're one of those. You've been speaking out about this issue of kids. And we were actually on a panel today discussing this. And you said, you know, I asked you a question about biblical truth, and that if you come down on the side of biblical truth, every time children benefit from that.
Yeah, it's strange how that works. It's as if our Maker, who said, I don't want you to cause one of the least of these to stumble, actually built in child protections, both in the Word of God, but also in the world of God. That if we actually look at, what is called natural law, what we can just derive and know about right and wrong, what we ought to do based on looking at the natural world, we come out with principles of child protection. And so that's what happens when you put them before us, when you put children before adults, when you prioritize the next generation above your own rights, priorities, identities, feelings. You actually get child protection, kids that thrive, and then you get a nation that thrives as well. So God's word and child protection always go hand in hand.
So why are Republicans running from the life issue?
Well, to me, it looks like someone's putting their finger in the political wind and trying to decide what they're going to stand for or against based on voting. And that is going to be like, I don't know, a wave of the sea driven and tossed by the wind. That's what it looks like to me. When the reality is we can and should plant our feet firmly on biblical truth, which is always going to have a connection with child protection. And we don't need to worry about the political winds, as it may be. But the other thing is that we will not only protect kids if we stand firm, but then we are going to educate other people on how to protect kids and stand firm as well. The waffling, the compromising, the soft pedaling of the truth, especially as it relates to children's right to life and matters of marriage and family, which correlates to children's right to their mother and father, it's not going to be good for anybody. Maybe, which I'm not even sure it will, maybe it will win you an election, but what are you going to get as a result? You're going to get destroyed, damaged, dead children, and you're going to lose your principles along the way.
Compromise of principle is never a formula for victory. And I'm concerned, we talked about this afternoon, the party. I understand some political figures that are new to this arena that maybe haven't completely formulated their position on this. But there are many that have been in this movement for years that are now, it's like, it's a herd mentality. There's a stampede. And it's troubling because I want in leaders, and I think leaders need to be principled. And there are certain things, I mean, look, you compromise on things that are minor. I mean, I'll compromise with you on tax rates. I'll compromise with you on tariffs. I'll compromise with you on certain elements. But there's some things that we can't compromise.
Right.
Some basic things like life.
Yep.
Those cannot be compromised. Parental rights.
Yep.
We cannot compromise on those things.
Yeah, there's sort of a hierarchy when you want to look at issues, right? The very top tier, if you get that wrong, everything it flows down, the chocolate fountain of political issues, you're going to get wrong if you don't get the stuff at the top right. What's at the top? What does it mean to be human?
Right.
Right? Life. And then what is marriage? Family. And then I would say the other one at the top is religious liberty, conscience rights. If you get those three wrong, there's no way you're going to get the downstream issues right. Those are the things, there's no compromise, not one bit, not one iota. Those are the things we stand firm on, win or lose.
Well, and we've compromised on some of those basic issues, and therefore it's created and compounded the problems. For instance, we've compromised on marriage, and so now we have an issue with religious freedom as a result of that compromise. And so it's kind of like playing a cultural whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
Because one thing's going to pop up here. But if we just stand fast, stand firm on what we know to be true, and then begin to be a force of influence on the culture.
That's right. Well, and I think that is the problem. You know, if you want to look at the church, for example, which I think is one of the mediating institutions against government, right? The church really does have a prophetic moral role in keeping the government in check, shaping the government. Unfortunately, what we've seen is the nations are discipling the church. And it needs to be the other way around. Our principles, which do not change, need to be informing the culture, shaping the culture, influencing the culture. And unfortunately, we've let it go the other direction for way too long. And children are paying the price.
Yeah. Martin Luther King Jr. had a great quote on that. He said, the church is not the servant nor the master of the state, but we're a prophetic voice to the state. And if we ever lose that prophetic voice, we're nothing more than a glorified country club. I want to play a clip. The issue of abortion is front and center in this race, this presidential race. We have the Democrats that are all in. Kamala Harris has made this a #1 issue. I believe it is a reason that she selected Tim Walz as her running mate from Minnesota, a state that really is not that significant in the electoral count. But he is just as radical as she is on all of these issues, abortion, transgenderism. But Donald Trump has, you said, this is a state's issue. I disagree with that. It is a fundamental rights issue, and those are not relegated to the borders of any state. That is universal. But now more controversy, more concerning news coming to pro-lifers with Melania Trump set to release a new book, her memoirs, in which she talks about being pro-choice. I want to play a clip of a social media post, a video that she released in advance of that book, clip number 11.
Individual freedom is a fundamental principle that I safeguard. Without a doubt, there is no room for compromise when it comes to this essential right that all women possess from birth: individual freedom. What does my body, my choice really mean?
How do you respond to that? Why now? I can't understand the timing of this.
No, and I mean, I'll tell you what, the Twitterverse has all kinds of speculations about why would she release that right now? Does she not want her husband to win? Maybe she doesn't want to be in the White House, or are they really thinking that they're going to get some of those independents over to their side?
She's been completely silent.
Yeah.
People have always said, where's she been? They haven't seen her. She only pops up every now and then, wasn't at the RNC.
Yeah.
But she releases this?
I don't think that they're going to win any votes. What they are doing is demoralizing the people that were the most enthusiastic about them going back to the White House. I don't know. I mean, obviously the monkey business with the GOP platform,
right?
That was hard to take. But now you've got the First Lady coming out, and literally that could be an ad for the Democratic Party. I mean, it's absolutely gutting people's enthusiasm. Some of Trump's core supporters, in terms of maybe they'll vote for him, but I don't think they're going to be evangelists for him any longer.
I'm not going to mention any names, but I don't do that unless I've talked to them. But I had a number of people call me, pastors and others, when I was venting my frustrations with the platform committee and what had taken place there and scrubbing the pro-life language. And I had some people even say, well, Melania's, she's good on these issues. I said, I don't think you should put your eggs in that basket. And now she's made very clear where she stands on this issue. To me, this is almost how to lose an election in 30 days.
Yeah, it sure looks that way. But I'll tell you what she did, and it's the same thing that Tim Walz did in the VP debate. They made a very unflinching, principled, absolutist argument for a woman's right to choose. We cannot respond with it's a state rights issue.
Right.
We need to respond with an, I'd say, more powerful, absolutist, fundamental, natural rights case for the rights of the child.
Well, when she says here, these essential rights that all women possess from birth.
From when?
From birth.
Oh, from birth.
Yeah.
But not before birth.
What about those women that are just maybe an inch away?
Yeah, or a foot away or whatever. Yeah, I think that I think we've been played, Tony. I think we've been played.
So we just got a couple minutes left, and all right, people are going to say, why are you bringing this up now? I didn't bring it up. She brought it up. I'm just responding to it. Okay, you made this point very well at our panel discussion. And folks, I would encourage you, you can go to if you have the Stand Firm app, we've got the various things posted from today's panel discussions. But you made a really good, you articulated, how do we go forward? Yes, we're disappointed, but look at the alternative. So we got to put our thinking cap on here. We have to evaluate what both sides are offering. Neither are 100%, of what we want. But as I said at the opening of this election won't save the country, but it could destroy it.
Yeah, it really could. And I would say this election could destroy kids. Yeah. I don't think that the GOP is strong on two major issues, right to life, right to their mother and father. But there's other areas where they're better. I think that they are better when it comes to protecting children's security in terms of a secure nation. I think that they are better when it comes to protecting children's bodies from the transgender threat. So we do need to put our thinking caps on. I would encourage your people to think from the perspective of how are we going to protect kids best.
So we can talk about these things. We can express our disappointment. We can express our disapproval and vote at the same time.
Yeah, that's exactly, well, you have to, right? And I would just encourage your audience, become an expert on all these issues, know more about it than anyone else, and then advocate for child protection, which ultimately leads to national protection and national thriving.
And Katie, we're going to have another opportunity to revisit the platform in 4 years, and I can assure you there's some that are not going to be flat-footed, thinking people are going to do things the way they should. We will be prepared for that. But folks, I want to encourage you to vote. Register and vote. And we've got a toolkit available for you. You can get that toolkit. It has lots of resources. You get a personalized voter guide. So text the word toolkit to 67742. That's toolkit to 67742, and you can get a copy of that toolkit. Katie, you got a couple of books out. Let's talk about the latest. But I want you to give a plug for that, because Dr. George was with us on the panel, and he was talking about the book. So
yeah, the first book is Them Before Us: Why We Need a Global Children's Rights Movement. That looks at every marriage and family issue through the lens of justice for children, from the definition of marriage to divorce to modern families to reproductive technologies to adoption. How is it that we can make sure we are doing hard things to protect kids? The second book is just my own little pet personal project with my co-author, just for all you parents out there. It's called Raising Conservative Kids in a Woke City. Basically, how do you pass on your worldview when everything is lying to your kids? And our third book just came out last week, Pro-Child Politics, where we conscript 19 subject matter experts, some of which have been at your forum, to address every major political issue through the lens of justice for children.
And you know what you're talking about in terms of raising kids in a woke city. You're from Seattle.
I'm from Seattle. We've been in the belly of the beast for a while.
Really?
But I will say, you can do it. Red state, blue state, homeschool, private school, public school. You can do it. Be strategic.
Intentional.
You
have to be intentional.
Yeah.
Katie Faust, I want to thank you for being here at the Pray Vote Stand Summit. I thank you for the work you're doing, your courageous stand for truth, and doing it in a loving, compassionate way, but a very forthright way.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for your principled stand. We're really grateful for FRC.
All right, thank you, Katie.
Yeah, thanks.
And folks, I do want to encourage you to join us tonight. Download the Real Life Network app, and you can be a part of tonight's events and tomorrow. We still got another day of great panel discussions, inspiring messages, all from a biblical perspective. And we're going to be praying along the way. It is the Pray, Vote, Stand Summit. And with that, I leave you with the encouraging words of the Apostle Paul found in Ephesians 6, where he says, when you've done everything that you can do, when you've prayed, when you've prepared, and when you've taken your stand, by all means, keep standing.
Washington Watch with Tony Perkins is brought to you by Family Research Council and is entirely listener-supported. Portions of the show discussing candidates are brought to you by Family Research Council Action. For more information on anything you heard today, or to find out how you can partner with us in our ongoing efforts to promote faith, family, and freedom, visit TonyPerkins.com.